Now, if this happened, Ricky would get a glint in his eye and ask for the same color. You're either red or white. That's the call for the night. Go red, go white. So if you heard, yo, go red, Danny, go red, Ricky'd be like, can I be red? Meanwhile, Normie'd be on the side going, I'll enjoy this one from the bench, because there won't be any fun on the ice, because he knew he was going white. And if you always wear your color, you knew you had a good chance for the W, as we call it. And if you were sporting the opposing jersey, you knew you'd better take a deep breath, maybe even two, because you were going to have to contend with trying to contain his enormous spirit, at least on the scoreboard. Yo would put it out there every shift, and the wonderful part of being on the ice with him was that he brought out the best in all those around him. As with all the great sports clubs, the Fossils also have their rituals. And an email from one of the crew, Scotty Bulldog Page, reminded me of one of the best weekly rituals. Before the start of each game, all the players are spending time in the locker room and out on the ice chatting with one another, checking in to see how each member is doing. One night, after Scotty was back from missing a few games and Johan was back after some treatments in Kelowna, Yo skates over, asks Scotty, how you doing, Scotty? You've been away. He's like, I'm fine, and how are you? And Yo says, I'm doing well, I'm okay, and then just carries on skating. And Scotty had to catch himself a few seconds later, stop, and just look at Yo cruising around through the warm-up, talking to guys, having a good time, grin on his face. And Scotty said he had to stop and think and give himself a kick. He said for feeling sorry over a sore knee or whatever the injury at the time was. The thought that came to him was, man, what a nice guy. And that's basically what it comes down to. We played the game that night. He was a little slower than usual, but he was out there having fun. And for Scotty and all the rest of us, that's the attitude that keeps him going when you have some aches and pains or whatever. He enjoyed life as it came to him, and he didn't let a little thing like cancer get in his way. One of the Fossils, Terry the Prairie Wind Miller, asked me to share another Tuesday night Johan moment. After Yo's initial diagnosis and subsequent treatment in Kelowna, he came back to play just 5 short weeks later. Milton remembers seeing Yo leaning his head and helmet on the boards during the warm-up and asked if he was all right. Yo said, yeah, I'm okay, just trying to take a bit of the pressure off. And then he lifted his head and skated off and played the game. Because there was no way he was going to be talked out about leaving the ice and resting to watch. He was determined to get himself back in the game of life. Now, having had the opportunity to visit Johan while he was in Kelowna following that surgery just a day or two afterwards, I can fill you in on the story behind that moment. As Johan was going through his rehab treatment, he was talking with one of his therapists and he asked her, when do you think I could get back on skates? She said, well, there was a fellow a few years ago, he made it back on skates 6 weeks later. And he just looked her in the eye and said, I'll be back in 5. And he was back in 5. The last bit that Milton remembers was later that spring, after we'd been on the ice for a few weeks. Johan came into the room and announced to a few of us that we're going back to Montana. So far it had just been he and I that had shared a few winters down there. But I told him there was no way I was going with just him to lug his big body out of the mountains if he got too tired. Not that that would happen, but I said, we got to bring reinforcements. So we found them. We grabbed Steve and Milty, myself and Ricky Turner, and of course, the other guy, Al. He came along with us, Al Eagleton. But he rallied us, he organized us, and he got us going. And there we found ourselves at Anders and Stacy's getaway, looking out at the Swan Mountains, picking our lines for the day, because you can sit in the living room there and just look at the range. Your hands reach away and choose where you're going to play for that day. So we picked where we were going and we headed up. And Milty, in his email, reminded me of how we just stood on the mountainside watching Yo tallybashing his way, all arms and legs, a big grin and a goofy helmet, which he had to wear. Didn't like wearing it, but he said he'd wear it forever. He was just hooting and grinning. The morning of skiing ended, all of us sitting down for lunch at the bottom of Jewel Basin, just staring up at the great big world, soaking in all the fun we'd had and the fun we were going to have after lunch. Now, as Milty said, I know Avro wasn't thrilled with Johan going, but I think he wanted to make this trip happen for him and for all of us. And the skiing was well worth it. As I reflect on all the adventures that I was able to share with Yo, I find myself remembering that as I drifted off to sleep each and every night, I'd be smiling and thinking, days just don't get any better than that. The more I think about the times we've spent with Johan, the more I just want to go on and on sharing the stories, the good memories. But all of us gathered here today have our own stories of living big in the shared presence of the powerful force of our dear friend Johan. And I know I've probably said enough for now. But through having the honor of Johan's friendship over the last 10 or so years, I got to see that he knew what was important